All right, peeps. It's about that time. It's been about 7, 8 weeks. So now we can get into the Knicks Championship. It's been 53 years since our last one, and there's no way you thought time was going to go by without me mentioning it. So let's get into it. Someone at church the other day asked me how long I was going to be riding this high. The answer is forever. A 53-year drought snapped. People who were consistently underdogs emerged on top. And my point guard has won every award under the sun after everybody counted him out from being a leader. So if that's not a Cinderella story, I don't know what is. You know, you had the 16-3 run, 12 of which were double digit wins, and then like the 13 game winning streak. Like there were two sweeps in there. That was crazy. But playoff time for me is very stressful, especially when you get into things like basketball or hockey. Coming from being a football girly where you either win or go home is not this long, drawn out process. It's very stressful to me to watch a series of best of seven rounds. So both hockey and basketball really take a lot out of me when it comes to playoff time. My heart is on the line. A lot of times my Apple Watch is asking me, am I dying? Are you having a heart attack? Should we call medical services? And there was nothing short of that going into this playoff series because, of course, the Knicks were the underdogs. They were, in a lot of people's eyes, an easy win, which, standing on the other side of where we are now, has to be the funniest thing ever. But even as a Knicks fan in their corner, it was like nobody really gave us the props for what we had been doing, how we had been playing, anybody on our team. And there's this notion that as a fan of New York teams, you're never going to get that respect, right? That's one of the running gags between me and my father and my stepfather, where they're like, yeah, well, nobody really likes New Yorkers, so they're not going to say, oh, the Knicks are building a great team or they're going to be a contender in the East. Nobody's going to say that, no matter how well they played. And up until that point, they had not been playing terribly. So I didn't understand it. And I also grew up in a time when people were like, yeah, I'm going to give props. We didn't win, blah, blah, blah. This maybe is me. But I always thought like we're going to at least be like, hey, because even when the Knicks were interviewed at different times during the playoffs, we're like, oh, we can't not step on the gas. They've got good players. We always got to watch our back. You never know what they're going to be able to do. We never got that in return. And I guess that's okay looking back at it. But like I said, it always seemed strange to me, right? Um, but whatever. So you go into it, we draw the Atlanta Hawks, who I found out, shortly after we drew them, that they had purposely lost the last game so that they could play us. And that ended in dramatic fashion. I thought it was a great series, right? But there were a lot of people who were prematurely, this happened a lot during the playoffs, like people prematurely thinking that they took home a win or thinking that, the series is over. The series is the best of seven games for all of the people out there who forgot. Um, but yeah, the Knicks went down 2-1, especially after Atlanta won those two games by 1 point. And I guess everybody thought it was over. You know what I mean? And it's funny to me because after moving from New York, I lived in Atlanta for a large portion of the time. So I was glad to see Atlanta in the playoffs. I was sad for them because I was like, I don't want to, root against them, but you're not going to beat my Knicks. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of contention between me and a lot of people that I went to school with in Atlanta because they were like, you're down here, you're either one of us or you're not. I'm like, when it comes to the Knicks, I'm not one of you, So um, there was a little bit of friction there. We're still friends, so it's all good, but a little bit of friction there. Um, and they were nowhere to be found after the 51 point game where we closed the door on Atlanta. So, a lot of big names were there. You had T.I., you had Lil Boosie, you had everybody in the building to see Atlanta play. That's sad for them, actually. But again, when you decide that something is an easier path, you find out that you chose wrong. So, oh well. But I had been in Atlanta. We had to drive down to Atlanta because my friends and I had gotten tickets to see Bruno Mars at the Bobby Dodd Stadium where Georgia Tech plays. And it was down during the time that this was game five, I believe. Because my friend kept asking me like, there seems to be a lot of people in the city, and I was like, I believe the playoff game is going on between the Knicks and the Hawks. So you know, it was very, very interesting to see people around town. They had a lot to say because I was in my Knicks gear, and they wanted to know why I was there. Hey, I used to live here, but also I'm here to see Bruno Mars. But um, it was a good time. It was all in good fun, but my Atlanta Hawks fans, they really had a hard time with that last loss. And I was up. I was glad for that. I was trying to see who we drew in the next round because there were a lot of people who, just like last year, thought Boston was just going to roll over everybody. And they just knew that Boston was going to beat the 76ers, and then that did not happen. So a lot of my friends from either up north or down south were blown away by the fact that the 76ers beat Boston. Um, you know, I feel differently having watched the playoff series last year, where again, everybody counted this an easy sweep or a gentleman's sweep when it came to Boston versus the Knicks. And then that did not happen, right? Um, so I wasn't really shocked about the 76ers winning. It was a good deal for us. We know we can take Philly, and we went out there and did just that. You know, there was a lot of people trying to get to these playoff games, especially in Philly. And it was a big deal because, they started, I think I first saw this rule being implemented like 3 or 4 years ago in the NHL, where they were trying to keep New York Rangers fans from coming to Tampa to take over the arena or coming to Carolina to take over the arena. They wanted the home arena to be for their people. And I get that, right? Um, but in response to keep New Yorkers from coming all over and buying tickets, they tend to post these rules that you have to be living in this area or your credit card has to be from a nearby area or you won't be able to buy tickets, which I always think is strange to me. But you want to make room for your fans, and I get that. I do think that after trying to keep as many people out as you could, to then end up swept is an interesting thing. I was hoping to see more from Tyrese Maxey. It really ended up just being a bloodbath because I think three of the 4 games, we ended up beating them by something of like 20 to 25 points or more at some point. There was one game that was kind of close and we pulled it out, but it was a dramatic sweep. So I knew at that point when we swept the 76ers that A, we weren't going to get any props for that, but B, that there were going to be some major changes in the offseason when that happened. And then when we drew the Cavs, I was like, okay, this might be a bit more difficult, especially when we went down 29 points in that first game. And I was like, okay, they had gone on like I think a 7-0 run. So they were due for a loss. They had lost those two games to Atlanta. So, I'm not one of those people that believes in an 82 game season you have to win them all. Or if you're talking about baseball, that in 162 games you have to win 99% because everybody knows that's not what what's going to happen. But it didn't matter. I had been watching the game in my room. My poor mother is tired of listening to me yell at the TV, right? But we were down 29 points, and I don't know that I ever in the series when the Knicks got behind felt like everything was over because I had watched them play for a good bit during the season, kind of being like, well, okay, now it's time to show up. You know what I mean? What my stepfather calls the bend but don't break, and now we're going to hunt you down. So I don't know that there was ever going to be something that was a big enough deficit, but 29 points really pushed me there. Okay. Um, and again, there was a lot of celebrating early as if winning in the first half is all you need to win. Um, but we walked the Cavs back down and won that game. And I knew that once we walked them down from the 29 points, I was thinking to myself, that really discouraged them. So they're probably not going to win the series now, right? And that's exactly what happened. I didn't believe it was going to be a sweep, but I didn't think they were going to win. And they got swept. And I was just waiting to hear like them be like, yeah, they rallied, they bounced back, and we weren't on top of our game, but we're gonna, next season we're gonna, adjust and do whatever. But like it was like everybody's approach to be like, we're actually winners though. Can't do anything but laugh at that because you got swept, so you didn't win any games. And this is actually the second sweep, right? So we're on a 13-0 run. The only team to beat us was Atlanta. And no matter what you want to say about that last game, they actually did beat us in the series. So, what is it? You know what I mean? Um, the poor Pistons fans were talking about, K could have did this, K could have did that, shoulda, woulda, coulda. You didn't beat the Cavs, but we did. So it is what it is. And one thing about the Knicks is that they love, lulling their prey into a sense of, calm and serenity before they come in for the kill. Because there were a lot of games that they won that they were down a good bit, enough that, a person would believe that this game could be a foregone conclusion. So, there's clips of, the Spurs, the Cavs, um, and a couple of people just like on the side of the bench, like we don't have anything to worry about. And then when the final buzzer sounds, everybody is stunned. I thought it was a big deal for us to be back in the Eastern Conference Finals after we hadn't done so in 20 years, and we're back the very next year after having lost to the Pacers the year before. And it was a big deal. Everybody was talking about Rick Brunson having played against the Spurs 20 years ago, all of these things. And it was a dynamic moment, a historic moment in the lives of the Brunsons, and being able to have been alive 20 years ago and watch kind of these two things come to fruition. So it was a big deal for fans who had been around for a long time. But we came out of the Sixers and the Cavs and even Atlanta smelling like roses, so we were ready for the big game. And there were points during trying to become Eastern Conference champions that I was trying to figure out whether or not they were having too much time off. in between games, right? Like we swept the 76ers, and that Pistons Cavs series had gone the long run. And I'm like, 7, 8, 9 days off. Is that going to be good or bad? Who knows? It could be either one of those things. You never know. And then you start seeing them go down at, 29 points in that first game, and you're like, oh, they took too much time off. Or then they sweep the Cavs, and you're like, how is this going to go with the Western Conference team? Because are they gonna adjust from the first week and some change that they had off, or are they gonna do something a little different? You know, whatever. And so there was a lot of discussion around me about how much time they were having off. You know, so I know that kind of made me antsy, but they're professionals, so they know what to do, and they came out and did it. So the stage was set for the Knicks versus the Spurs, and I think everybody I talked to had again thought this was a foregone conclusion. There wasn't a playoff round this year that we appeared in that people didn't side with the other team. They're like, this is going to be an easy win. We're going to walk all over them. We're going to blah, blah, blah. And it was especially funny to come away with two sweeps and listen to people be like constantly moving the goalpost, because now the East is not as hard to get through because the Knicks did it and they were able to sweep and they were able to do these things. So the Western Conference team is going to beat them. And I didn't understand that. I was like, we played them in the NBA Cup. We won. And a lot of people were like, oh, that doesn't count, or it doesn't. I mean, it has to count for something because it shows you that this is a team that we could beat, if nothing else. But even if you look at their record from last season, we were leading them in head to head competitions. We're 6-2 against them. They beat us twice. And at this point, on the other side of it, we've won the cup against them and the finals against them. So it was very like, I didn't know where everybody was getting these stats from. Like, it's one thing to be a Spurs fan and hope that they win. It's another thing to be mad that your team lost. So you're picking, the team that's playing against whoever beat your team. But it's another thing to kind of blatantly be like, oh, the stats are on our side, or this is on our side. There's nothing on your side. What are you talking about? And it's the playoffs, so things could go either way. I get it. But like when I would say like we've played them a few times and won, so I'm pretty confident in my team. People would be staring at me like why ever would you be confident in them? It seemed strange to me. Um, but anyway, yeah, I just was like, oh, okay. So, at that point, we had won like 12 games in a row or something like that. And it just didn't seem like anybody wanted to give us any props. So it was very much like the whole talking point around Jalen Brunson not being tall enough, quote unquote. And, Wembenyama, he's tall enough. And so he's going to end the playoff dreams of the Knicks. And I mean, I would have been. I'm a diehard Knicks fan, so I'm one of those people that was proud of them for making it to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Proud of them for making it back. Um, I, I do miss Dante DiVincenzo, but I was proud of them for making it back, and proud of them for winning. Proud of them for making it to the finals for the first time in a long time. So all of those things would have been fine to me, but there was like a fire in all of Knicks Nation as much as the players to come home with the title, because there were so many naysayers out there for no reason other than they just don't like New Yorkers. Not for any real reason. And we went out there and did just that. I think that I was mostly impressed by the Spurs because everybody became one of those things where it was like a older, more mature team playing against a younger, faster team. And, I've seen matchups like that in all sports areas. I know the Rangers a couple years back were in the Eastern Conference Finals, and we were on average the youngest team in the league. So, but there's good things that come with that and not so good things that come with that, right? Because, you're faster, you're able to make quick decisions, and even if things don't go well, you can recover from them. The problem is that a lot of times, because you have younger players, they tend to make decisions in games that aren't the best, that you don't have to deal with necessarily with mature players. Um, so you could see that in the game where there was a pass to Wembanyama's back, and of course Jalen sees it, intercepts it. We take advantage of that. And so a lot of what I saw in the Knicks Spurs matchup had to do with the fact that there was a lot of capitalizing on mistakes. Um, the Spurs played really well in the first half, except, like my dad used to always say, the game is not over till it's over. And there are four quarters, and so you have to play all four quarters. And that seemed to be like a pandemic or an epidemic in the whole playoff system this year, where everybody was like, well, if I just had this thing, I would have won. Well, maybe, but you didn't. So what are we talking about? You know? Um, but yeah, there was a lot of things to take away from the Spurs Knicks series because I felt the officiating was terrible. And that's not to say that the Knicks played brilliantly. They played great when it mattered. And that's usually what gets you to titles, playing great when it matters. But the officiating was terrible. I mean, missed calls everywhere. And like blatant ignoring of flagrant fouls. So I just kind of was like, maybe I should sit this one out because I'm going to be really annoyed. You know, it seemed like they couldn't wait to get Cat out of the lineup so that they could try to cripple the Knicks offense. But this isn't last year or even the year before. So the Knicks bench came out swinging, you know. So shout out to Cat for keeping his cool because, and I understand that this is his job to keep his cool, but my mother was mad on his behalf, and my mother doesn't watch sports, so there's that. Because some of the calls were just stupid, um, especially since you put that up against watching some of the things that Wembanyama did. And like, I get that he's 22, 23. Yeah, but y'all been shoving this idea that he's like Zen and he hangs out with monks, and then I'm watching him like purposely elbow people in the face. And don't give me that nonsense about how, oh, y'all wouldn't have made it in 80s, 90s NBA, whatever, whatever. But like, don't try to elbow me in the face and pretend like you didn't do it. You know what I mean? You've been this tall for your whole life, mostly. And now you're trying to pretend like you don't know how to control your elbows. And then everybody is like, oh, it's not really a flagrant. Oh, it's not really this. Oh, it's not really that. While handing out other people flagrants and texts for nonsense. So I only say that to say it didn't seem like there was fair officiating anywhere, right? And like, I'm like, man, in these finals games, this is what drives conversations about the games being rigged or, you know, sports betting ruining things and all of these things. And I can see why people think that. I don't know that I have a firm opinion one way or the other. I can just say that I did not particularly care for the way the games were officiated. And that's not to say that I believe that refs are like, you got to get every call all the time. But some of these were blatant, like, what are we talking about here? Because even I'm watching games and even some of the announcers are like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, some of these are former players. Like, it's one thing to be like a hockey fan, they call a penalty, you end up in the penalty box. And a lot of times you'll get the guy in the penalty box and they'll say, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. You watch the replay. And they absolutely did, right? I remember watching this series and being like, that's not what's happening there. Like, what are y'all talking about? It's weird. Weird. So I felt like the series could have been better or more dynamic if the officiating had been better, right? And I think that for me, I just wanted to sit back and watch them play. You know, it seemed like there was some hard officiating in all of the series, some hard officiating on, the Knicks, and then some lax officiating on the Knicks where it was like against the other team and then nothing was happening. It just seemed not great across the board. So I was not a fan of that. But um, yeah, and then on the whole thing with, elbowing people in the face and then Mitch having to elbow him back because, like, at some point, you got to draw the line somewhere. All of a sudden, after he gets elbowed in the face on his own, he seems to have control of his elbows after that. But again, there was a lot of shit talking for the way that things actually played out, whether it be De'Aaron Fox trying to like knock Jalen Brunson down, or Wembenyama saying, I'm inside your head, and then for y'all to fold like a wet napkin. I had one of my friends say to me that, we don't have to worry about the Knicks winning because they're not going to make it anywhere near the finals. And then he saw me during the Spurs Knicks finals and was like, they made it here on the power of friendship. Sure, if that's what you want to call it, the power of the Nova Knicks. I do still feel like Dante should have been here for this. But Dante has a ring, so I'm not that broken up about it. Um, I was glad that all of the guys got to experience it together on those two levels, both in college and the NBA finals. They work really hard together. And one of the things that Jalen Brunson said later on, like their resilience is based on, when things didn't go their way, you got to move on from that and bounce back. Like one of the things is when Josh tries to make that layup late in the game to take the lead, if the ball goes in and out, and he's just sitting there on the court like, no way, right? They're like, yeah, get up, shake it off, let's go right back at it. You know what I mean? And they came out with the win for that game, which is an important lesson. But the game win had to do with OG's putback, trying to get the ball inbound to Jalen, a certain amount of time left on the clock, not much. OG throws the ball in, and I've watched the clip from different angles too, because Jalen puts it up, and I don't know that he's actually putting it up to actually hit the shot or just putting it up hoping that somebody gets to the basket for the rebound. Well, OG gets to the basket and throws it down and takes the lead. And I know that everybody's plan is always to guard Brunson, which a few years ago was the way to do things, but he has other weapons now. He has people off the bench. He has, Josh Hart is a prolific rebounder for someone his height, going up against other people who are taller than him. So I don't know. The Spurs' defensive strategy didn't make a lot of sense to me in the third and fourth quarters, because it was like, well, we'll get Wembenyama to guard Brunson, and I was like, why though? Why is he not just? I don't know. So on that particular play, he's like not in the paint, which I thought was strange. Yeah, I mean, at one point, Brunson is being double teamed at the top of the key, and he throws the ball up because he's being double teamed, and no one is guarding OG. He just like comes from out of bounds, having inbounded the ball, and like right to the basket to put it in, and like everybody on the Spurs is stunned because they can't believe that this happened, and they're looking at each other like, who was supposed to guard OG? Like, no one seems to have known their assignment. And again, these are the disadvantages of having a younger team. You know what I mean? So, and just listening to Mike Breen shout out OG Anunoby and be stunned like the rest of us were, because a lot of people thought this game was going another way. But you know, he screaming, it's good," and there's 1.2 seconds remaining. You know, the Spurs have time for one more possession, but it's good. Um, shout out to Mike Breen. I'm glad that he got to announce the finals win, because he does talk about how, Knicks fans, it's been a long time. You deserve this. It's finally happening. It's here. It's over. It's over. We've finally done it. You know. And if you don't listen to Josh and Jalen's podcast, you should, because Mike Breen had been on it, and he says to the two of them, "Do you guys know what you've done here in New York? The things that you've done here in New York for Knicks basketball and things like that." Because my father's argument is always that New York has been a basketball city. The Liberty won 2 years ago. Shout out to the Liberty. But do you know what you've done for Knicks fans being able to win games and come from being 17 and 65, you know what I mean, to where they were at that time, having been to the Eastern Conference Finals and having not done that in a while, to finally being champions in this lifetime. So good times. Shout out to the Nova Knicks. They did it, together again. It's so weird to say that you're so proud of a bunch of people who you don't know. Um, Deuce hitting shots. You could hear his name being called in other arenas because the fans are there. People know who he is. They're showing up everywhere. Shout out to Alvarado for being like, I'm not as tall as Jalen, but I'm going to handle Wembenyama and see what y'all do with that. You know what I mean? And he was having a hard time because, I mean, grabbing the captain by the face and shoving him down while y'all are acting like it's not a big deal was really weird to me, but I digress. But shout out to Alvarado for making sure to handle that and shutting all that down. And it was funny because he did say on the podcast with Monica McNutt and Carmelo Anthony, like, if we win, I'm going to be drunk for 8 days. And from the parade on, people were like, have you seen Jose? Is he okay? Because that man was out partying. He deserved it. Good stuff. And, in the end, just kind of not only winning, but proving haters wrong. I love that for them. Everybody had all of these talking points that didn't mean anything. Oh, you're not going to be able to win a championship unless a guard is such and such arbitrary height. I mean, sure. But I've always said, when you have the work ethic and the know-how and the ability to do great things, when people critique you, they have to critique things that you can't change. So in Jalen's case, it's his height. He's not going to, he's going to be 30, 31, something like that. So at this point, he's probably not going to get any taller. This is how tall he is. So it is what it is. But you didn't say ball handling. You didn't say um, he could shoot better. You didn't say that he could be better with his footwork. You didn't say any of that because those are things that are measurable that he could actually work on. You would have to pick something like his height so that you could discount him, but not really have a reason to discount him, right? And everybody harped on that. The internet never forgets. So in the days after winning the championship, um, all of the commentary about him leaving Dallas to move to New York, whether it to be closer to family or to work with his dad or whatever it is, all of that commentary was like the Knicks are stupid for paying for him. You're not going to be able to build a team around him. You're not going to do any of these things, right? And I think it's entertaining for y'all to get on TV and say things about people with your whole chest. And then when somebody brings up, hey, you said this thing, how do you feel about it now? Y'all are like, oh, y'all should let that go. Why? You said it on TV for the world to hear. Why should we let it go? You know? But yeah, the internet never forgets. And they were putting up all of the quotes that people were saying, the ice cold takes about who's going to be able to handle Brunson in the playoffs and who's going to be able to do this. And it was like this notion that the Spurs had somebody who was over 7 feet and therefore that guaranteed them a win. It didn't happen like that, you know. And so, Brunson is better than me because he's used to dealing with naysayers. But I think for me, it's always weird for me because people had all of these assumptions as if he didn't win a title in high school, didn't win two in college, and now has added to his collection. He was the first person the Knicks are the first team to win an NBA Cup and a finals championship in the same year. So there were a lot of historic things that were happening in this playoff run that everybody kept trying to minimize. That, I mean, their record is 16-3. The only other team to do that, I believe, was the Chicago Bulls. So, if everybody could do what they did, there would be more teams having done it. But, you know, everybody talked a good game. And listen, I enjoy being an underdog because I like to go back and ask people their opinion, right? Because one of my favorite things on TikTok now is watching people react to games that they thought they were winning, their team was winning. Um, Predictions. There's a couple of people online that were predicting, hey, the Knicks are going to win the championship. And folks was like, yeah, okay. So that I enjoy. The thing I wasn't prepared for, though, is the fact that a lot of people get to know you based on the things that you enjoy, based on the things that you affiliate with. So when the Knicks won, they were in San Antonio, and I was like, okay, I'm going to bed. There was no such thing as going to bed because I was getting calls from everywhere. I had friends that lived in Phoenix. I have friends that live in Florida, and of course, all my family in New York who were calling me back to back to back to back. Did you see it? Did you see it? Did you hear Mike Breen on the call? Did you see Rick and Jalen giving each other hugs? Did you see Josh Hart with the Twins? Did you see it? And I was like, man, I'm overwhelmed like you would think I played this game. But it was such a loving feeling to have everybody come together and be like, yo, this is a great thing that's happening to this team that you really enjoy. Are you up for that? Did you see that? So I think I ended up going to church the next day or at least the next weekend. And there were people there that I hadn't spoke to really that were like, oh, I saw your team won. You know, I saw your team get the championships. They're preparing for a parade. Are you going back for the parade? Now, I did not get a chance to go back for the parade, um, and I should have because everybody I knew in New York, everybody I'm related to in New York, went to the damn parade. I am so jealous. But if you think I'm not heading back there to get a picture with the trophy, you are mistaken. So they got to see the guys on the bus and be at the town hall and all of that packed in there like sardines. I got to watch it on TV. It didn't have the same effect, but I saw it. But yeah, I had people calling me till like 2 o'clock in the morning when they won, making sure that I'm up and witnessing it. Are you seeing it? Do you see it? Do you see them taking pictures? You know, I felt like a proud parent watching all of the guys get to this level after everybody told them they weren't really contenders, right? There's always going to be somebody in your way. So I'm going to go on record as saying I think this year we could do a repeat. I'm going to say that because that's my team. There's no downside to repping your team, you know? And when I watched all of the things that were going on at the parade, I wanted them to be on Jimmy Fallon because I remember when when Jalen was there a couple years ago, and he was like, "When I win, I'm gonna bring the trophy here, and I'm gonna sit it on your desk." And Jimmy was like, "I'll be here for that." And sure enough, they came back and did just that. And just the promises fulfilled, and Jalen being like, "Yeah, I came here, and New York welcomed me. And this is why I came to New York." Everybody tried to make it seem like it was a bad idea for New York to take a chance on me. And here's a team in Dallas that had Luka and Jalen, and you had Jalen playing behind Luka. You got rid of Jalen, and I don't think that was a bad decision. I think that you had a 1A guy, you know, that you were going to stand behind, and so if Jalen wanted some playing time, then he's probably going to need to go where he's going to be the 1A guy. That didn't not make sense to me, right? What didn't make sense is that they then traded away Luka, and I was like, "What in the world is your?" Well, okay, sure. And so there's a clip on TikTok where somebody asked Luka, "Did you know that Jalen can play like this?" And Luka's like, "Yeah, I knew that." Yeah, he was like, there was a stretch in there where I was hurt, and he came and took over. He's always been like this, and if anything, he's gotten much better. You know what I mean? So you know, it seems like the people who needed to know did know, and everybody else is just now coming to the table. But shout out to the Brunsons, um, shout out to the Hearts, shout out to the Bridges, to the Anunobys, all of that. Um, to the Mitch Robs and all of that. Listen, there's nothing better than, speaking of Mitchell Robinson, seeing him dunk on Joel Embiid, especially after that nonsense last year or 2 years ago, where he's pulled down by his ankle, his hurt ankle. Like watching him get the ups, get the rebound, and dunk. I enjoyed that. I had that on repeat before the Anunoby putback. So, and then, Brunson dropping 45 with a bum wrist is historic in its own right, you know. So, people keep asking me if I'm ever going to come down from that. I went to Taekwondo the other day and they were like, "You're just going to keep wearing Knicks stuff?" Absolutely. I bought a lot of stuff. Everybody's going to see it. I'm going to keep buying stuff because my team won. Speak to me nice. My team has a 1A guy that's under 6'2". Now run tell that. But that's all for me for now. Football season is getting ready to start up. And one of my brother's favorite running gags is, "You are a Dallas Cowboys fan." And to that I say, if the Knicks can win after 53 years, Dallas can do anything. but we'll see. Um, and then, you also want, for me, the Rangers to win something. So we'll see what my other teams do. Right now, I'm batting 1,000, but check in with me next year and see how I feel. Anyway, that's it for today, guys.